The Mexican embassy in La Paz under siege. The government says it is taking Bolivia's de facto government to the International Court of Justice. Women resist sexual abuses in a Guatemalan town. And China condemns the U.S. for attempting to undermine its sovereignty. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo and this is From the South. The Mexican government says it will take the de facto government in Bolivia to the International Court of Justice over the siege of its diplomatic premises in La Paz. Mexico condemned the heavy military and police presence around its embassy and residence, including the use of drones. It warned of the risk faced by diplomatic personnel as well as by Bolivian citizens who are under the protection of Mexico as a result of persecution since the coup. The foreign ministry said that there are about 50 people, including civilians, police, and military surrounding the embassy, and that the de facto government has not given any explanation.
As we haven't received an answer in line with international principles of respect, and not only of respect, but of guarantees for the integrity of diplomatic premises, which are considered part of the territory of the country represented, today Mexico is presenting legal papers to the International Criminal Court for the violation of diplomatic obligations. What we want is that the integrity of our diplomatic premises is protected, and also of those who are inside those premises, which are part of Mexican territory.
The Mexican president also warned the de facto government in Bolivia not to approach the embassy.
They should pull back from any temptations to take over or infringe on our sovereignty by wanting to enter our embassy, the Embassy of Mexico in Bolivia. Not even Augusto Pinochet did that.
Our correspondent in Mexico, Eduardo Martinez, has more.
The Mexican government says it's taking international action against what it calls a siege of the ambassador's residence and the embassy itself in La Paz by the de facto government. It's taking the case to the United Nations International Court of Justice in The Hague to denounce these serious violations of international treaties, which Bolivia is also a signatory to. It's now several days since we first saw this increased presence of intelligence and police personnel outside the diplomatic premises, when 9 Bolivians from the mass party of Evo Morales and other figures linked to the deposed government took refuge after last month's coup. They asked Mexico to give them asylum, and then the de facto government in Bolivia said that there were arrest warrants for 4 of them. The Mexican government has said that it certainly will not hand these people over, and pointed out that the arrest warrants were announced after these people had requested asylum. There are about 10,000 Mexicans who live in Bolivia, and the Mexican government is already taking steps to ensure that they are protected if it's forced to close its embassy.
We thank Eduardo Martinez for that report. The Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, or ALPA, has released a statement expressing its concern over the Bolivian de facto authority siege of the Mexican embassy in La Paz. The document condemns the excessive police and intelligence agency presence outside the building as a violation of international law and conventions. It goes on to call on the de facto government to respect its obligation to Article 22 of the Vienna Convention regarding diplomatic relations. One of self-proclaimed President Janine Áñez's first acts following the coup d'etat against Evo Morales was to announce the withdrawal of Bolivia from the ALPA group. Andrónico Rodriguez has been nominated as a presidential candidate for the Movement Towards Socialism Party in Bolivia. Social movements put Andrónico's name forward at the mobilized youth rally being held in Valle Sacra. He has been a prominent figure in indigenous movements for years and has long been touted as a future leader. However, Andrónico himself said that the candidate selection process is still undergoing.
I am happy and grateful to all the mobilized young people and the social movements who are calling for me on social media and at some rallies. But it's not the moment. It's not defined yet. I've always said, candidate or not, we're committed to this process. We were born in this process. We are here with our brothers and sisters who are organizing in a really responsible way in events such as this one.
For over 2 years now, workers at the Furukawa plantation in Ecuador have been demanding respect for their rights. Now the Ecumenical Commission for Human Rights has condemned the Ecuadorian government for neglect in the case.
The situation of the workers at Furukawa has been called the worst case of human rights violations in Ecuador. Numerous human rights organizations have condemned the suffering inflicted on more than 1,200 victims who have been working for years producing abaca fiber in the most precarious conditions. The workers are still demanding justice and reparations.
I broke my leg working on a machine at kilometer 42. I was working night and day to maintain my family and my daughters. When I had the accident, this leg was the one that took the brunt, and it looked like this. I spent 2 years at the hospital and nobody gave me a dime. The company must give us justice. We don't have anywhere to live or anything to eat. We are always there waiting for a settlement and nothing happens. The government turns a deaf ear, but it should take action.
The Ecumenical Commission for Human Rights filed a petition in defense of the workers to establish the violation of human rights by the company. It has also condemned the Ecuadorian state for neglect.
That is why we are accusing the state of omission, because it knew about the situation. They haven't done a single thing to stop this violation of the workers' rights.
A group of United Nations experts on Afro-descendant rights recently expressed concern about the Furukawa workers' situation. But despite all these declarations, both inside Ecuador and internationally, the owners of the company and the authorities maintain absolute silence. It's a case that has marked the year 2019 and which shows that there is still slavery in Ecuador.
After the break, protesters win a major victory in the Argentine city of Mendoza. We'll take a look in just a minute.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursday, only on LS1.
Back to From the South. In the Guatemalan town of San Juan Zacatepeques, women have added their voices to their peaceful resistance against a cement company. They say they are suffering from harassment and rape. The case is another in a long list of similar cases of violence against women in the country, which continue to be unresolved.
The women of San Juan Zacatepeques say they are victims of sexual abuse committed by employees of the cement-making company Progreso S.A., which is operating in their area without any prior consultation.
A group of people forced entry into my home. They opened the door, entered, hit me, beat me, arrested me, and then cut my hair. My hair wasn't like this. I had long hair.
It's not just harassment. There have been unreported incidents of the rape of minors and women too, according to the survivors.
There are young girls of 15, 16 who have children. The truth is, they're single mothers. Those responsible are the company's workers because they have been in our communities abusing and raping women.
The sexual violence that women are suffering in San Juan Zacatepeques is one of many incidents against land defenders. It's a mechanism to scare them, according to a leader from the north of Guatemala.
The majority of these women are subject to sexual abuse when they participate, when they speak. For example, Maria Toledo here in Santa Eulalia was denounced for talking about the defense of the territory.
Sexual harassment of women is an age-old technique for these businesses to defend themselves against the leadership of women, highlight social leaders Lucía Esteban.
They're afraid of women speaking. I imagine that's why they try to shut women up, so that they don't take positions of leadership.
In Guatemala, harassment and sexual violence are considered a normal practice. According to the National Forensic Science Institute, more than 550 women have been murdered in 2019, the majority of whom bore marks of sexual violence.
A law that would have facilitating polluting mining practices around the Argentine city of Mendoza has been suspended. Thousands of people mobilized against the law, which would have allowed big mining interests to use substances like cyanide and sulfuric acid in the region. The demonstrators said that the move would contaminate the local water supply. The governor of Mendoza says the law will be suspended to allow for dialogue. Chile's lower house of Congress has agreed to investigate accusations of sexual abuse by Chilean soldiers serving with the United Nations in Haiti. A recent report said Chilean and other Latin American troops demanded sexual favors from Haitian women in exchange for food and money. It says many women were left pregnant and at least 265 children were abandoned. The Chilean soldiers served as part of a UN stabilization mission between 2004 and 2017. Haitian police have seized an assortment of automatic weapons and ammunition from a criminal group involved in arms trafficking. According to local media reports, the weapons were found in a house belonging to a prominent businessman who has since been detained. The operation was carried out in collaboration with international law enforcement agents. A search is underway for suspects who are still at large. Jamaica Supreme Court has refused the application for leave to apply for judicial review by former Education Minister Ruel Reid and the president of the Caribbean Maritime University, Professor Fritz Pinnock. The ruling was delivered 1 week after the matter was heard in chambers. Lawyers representing the two are seeking to nullify corruption charges that arose from a contract procurement scheme between the ministry and the university. They were arrested in October. In Kenya, about 2,000 Kisumu residents are now homeless after heavy rains flooded houses. Residents were forced to migrate to higher ground as a result. However, a nearby river burst its banks, exacerbating the problem. Furniture, clothes, and school supplies were damaged.
All my books and Bible are soaking water. I don't know where I will get all the notes again. I don't know how I will begin because at school all teach Spanish when you don't have their notes. And up to now, it's still raining.
An airstrike on a shopping center on the outskirts of the Libyan capital, Tripoli, has killed 2 people and wounded 20 others. The town's mayor said the attack happened during rush hour when the center was busy with shoppers. It is not yet clear who carried out the attack. The incident comes a few hours after the country's UN-backed government requested for military support from Turkey in its fight against General Khalifa Haftar's so-called Libyan National Army. In July, an airstrike on a migrant detention center by Haftar's forces killed 53 migrants.
This plane was targeted along the bypassers during the bombardment. Until now, 12 people were wounded, 2 of which passed away. Some of the wounded are in critical condition, while others were just slightly injured.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has announced that the country's parliament will next month vote on a motion to deploy troops to Libya to support the United Nations recognized government. The move is in response to a request for Turkish military support by the Tripoli-based government of national accord or GNA, which has been struggling to halt an offensive by forces loyal to Benghazi-based strongman General Khalifa Haftar. Haftar's so-called Libyan National Army in April launched an offensive to seize Tripoli from the GNU.
God willing, we will pass it in Parliament on January 8-9, and thus respond to an invitation. We have given and will give all forms of support to the Tripoli government, which is fighting against the purchase general backed by Arab countries and Europeans.
7 migrants have lost their lives after the boat they were traveling on capsized on Lake Van in eastern Turkey. The boat was carrying dozens of Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghan migrants when it sunk a few minutes after 3 a.m. local time. A rescue operation is underway and 64 people have been rescued so far. The cause of the accident has not yet been established. Still to come, turmoil in Iraq as the president refuses to accept the prime ministerial nomination. Stay with us.
Una travesía para descubrirnos. Buscamos conexiones perdidas.
No nos queda otra que luchar, porque no tenemos nada que perder.
Realmente es por todos.
Recorremos el mundo con Reportajes Telesur.
Welcome back to From the South. China has called on the U.S. government to stay out of its internal affairs. A statement by the Ministry of Defense said a number of clauses in the recently signed 2020 National Defense Authorization Act are an attempt by the U.S. to undermine China's sovereignty.
On December 20 local time, the U.S. side signed the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020. The China-related contents in the act are filled with Cold War mentality that played up China-U.S. competition and hyped up the so-called China's military threat. Many of its provisions, including those related to Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Xinjiang, constitute gross interference in China's internal affairs, seriously violate the One China principle and the 3 joint communiques between China and the United States, severely damage bilateral military relations, and undermine mutual trust and cooperation between the two sides. The Chinese military has expressed its firm opposition against these clauses. Chinese authorities have lodged solemn representations to the U.S. side.
The authorities in Hong Kong have condemned the violent demonstrations that took place during the Christmas holiday. Our correspondent Iramsi Peralta reports.
The chief executive of the Hong Kong Administrative Zone, Carrie Lam, has condemned the violent acts carried out on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. She said this marred the festive spirit and had a damaging effect on residents and local businesses. After several days of relative calm over the Christmas holiday, extremist demonstrators wearing face masks took to the streets at night and occupied shopping malls, where they caused considerable damage. The police had to respond with anti-riot measures. The protesters also blocked the streets, set fires, and attacked some banks. The authorities say 25 people were injured and another 23 were arrested. Apart from Carrie Lam, other Hong Kong authorities have also condemned these acts of violence and said they only hurt ordinary citizens who wanted to enjoy the holidays in peace. You'll remember that these protests have been going on for 6 months now. They started in opposition to an extradition bill. This was withdrawn by the local administration, but the protests continued and began to take on separatist demands, provoking regular confrontations with the police.
At least 16 people have been killed in the Philippines by typhoon Typhoon. The storm tore across central islands of the archipelago with winds of up to 190 kilometers per hour. Many people are reported missing as the storm destroyed homes and tore down power lines. Thousands more were left stranded as they tried to travel home for Christmas. The typhoon hit some of the same areas that were devastated by Haiyan 6 years ago when over 6,000 people died. Pope Francis prayed for the victims of this latest storm.
I join in the pain that affected the dear people of the Philippines because of the typhoon Typhoon. I pray for the numerous victims, for the injured, and for their families. I invite everyone to recite the Ave Maria with me for these people I love so much.
Iraqi President Barham Salih says he would rather resign than appoint a prime minister nominated by the Iranian parliamentary bloc. The president issued a statement which said that appointing Assad al-Edani would not placate protesters demanding an independent prime minister with no party affiliation. He added that since the constitution does not give him the right to reject nominees for the premiership, he is ready to quit. For weeks, protesters have been taken to the streets to vent their anger against the entire political class.
He was not formally instated. Yesterday, there were killings in Old Wadba Square and in Basra. All these killings before he gets instated. What if he becomes a prime minister? What then? We tell them, from this place, making the corrupt Assad al-Aidani prime minister will only happen over our dead bodies.
Israel's embattled Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faced a stiff challenge to his leadership of the Likud party as the party held internal elections on Thursday. His longtime rival Gideon Sa'ar hopes to create an upset. Polls opened at 9 a.m. and closed at 11 p.m. local time with roughly 160,000 eligible voters. Netanyahu has held the reins of his party for 2 decades and must win by a landslide in order to maintain his influence ahead of general elections early next year. Results are expected on Friday morning. And we finish in Mexico, where Christmas is also a time for flowers. And in Mexico, that means poinsettias, the traditional Christmas Eve flower. Our correspondent went to meet the men and women who devote their lives to growing them.
These are the nurseries of Xochimilco in the south of Mexico City. They begin to turn red halfway through the year when the poinsettias, or Christmas Eve flowers, begin to bloom. Most of them are tended by men and women who learned as children to care for these symbols of the Christmas holidays.
I prefer to be in the fields than in the kitchen. I love the beauty of this flower. I live from this. People invite me to go and do exercises for pensioners, things like that. But I say no. I can't leave the flowers because they are like my children. I love them.
The love and dedication of these flower growers is essential for achieving Mexico's annual production of 20 million of these flowers. But it's a struggle that's getting harder. Many younger people are abandoning this work. They'd rather do other things.
If you really work at it, you get results, but you have to work hard to pay for the kids' schooling and what they like, but you have to work from sunrise to sunset to get the best quality.
Some say that these poinsettias came from Guerrero state, others from Morelos, but there is no doubt they're 100% Mexican.
These flowers bring us a lot of joy at Christmas. As Mexicans, we all enjoy what these flower growers produce.
The flower goes by different names in different parts of the world. Easter flowers, parrot flowers, federal stars, crown of the Andes. In Mexico, its production gives work to more than 13,000 people. most of them in small family businesses, like that of Gabriela, who has a stall in the market of Aquescomatlo.
This is about our roots, our culture, our work. I have been growing these flowers since I was a girl, thanks to my parents who taught us. This is a dignified, honorable job, and it's very important for us as women.
In 2018, Mexico's poinsettia producers exported 40 million cuttings to grow these ornamental flowers. Most went to the United States, but Mexican flowers also have a big presence in Europe and in Asia.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.
In a world infested by inequality,